Hi everyone, welcome to Yarn Tale Crochet Co. If you are new here, my name is Cynthia and I love to crochet. Today we are diving into episode number 2 of What I Wish I Knew Before I Started Crocheting. So whether you are a complete beginner or you've been crocheting for a little while, I hope these tips are going to help make your crocheting journey, hobby, career, whatever it is you may be doing with your crochet a little easier and a lot more fun. If you are watching this video, I'm going to assume that you have watched episode number 1. If not, I do suggest hopping over to that episode first. Give that a watch. It is a pure basic 101, just why crochet is a great hobby, the tools that you need, some of the abbreviations that you need to know. It is just a great starter video, especially if you are a beginner. So I'm going to post that video right here. Head on over there, give that a watch, and then come right on back. All right, tip number 1 is going to be selecting the right yarn. I did touch base on this in episode number 1, but I'm pretty sure all I told you was that you're going to be terrified looking at the walls of yarn in your craft stores. So why I say yarn is important is because there are so many different types that have their own uses. If you are an absolute beginner, I definitely recommend choosing an acrylic yarn first. It's just a lot easier for you to see all of your stitches, especially if you are learning new projects such as stitches that use back loops only, front post stitch, back post stitch. Don't worry, we will go through what all of those mean. But using an acrylic yarn, your yarn itself, it's not going to separate on you. It's not going to be too fluffy. You're going to be able to see everything way more clearly and get a better understanding of the stitches for each project. Once you get comfortable with that, then you can move on to fluffier yarns like chenille or velvet, the baby blanket soft yarns, all of those. But I definitely suggest starting with the acrylic yarn first. Once you've done a couple projects with acrylic yarn and you are comfortable with the stitches that you have learned, you can move on to some of the different yarns. For example, we have cotton yarn. This is great, especially if you're doing summer projects like summer garments, bucket hats, tops, washcloths, towels, things like that. A cotton yarn is going to be really good. This is Bernat Handicrafter cotton yarn. I got this at Michael's. This is a 4-weight yarn. They do suggest you use a 5mm. Is it a 5mm? Yeah, 5mm hook with this. You can vary the hook size depending on the project that you are doing. I will explain more very soon. But yes, just because it is telling you a specific hook size to use does not mean you have to use that hook size, but we will get into that. Another yarn that you can use is this Bernat Velvet. I like to use this yarn for scrunchies. This is a 5-weight bulky yarn. They suggest using a 6.5mm hook. I use a 6mm hook when I am making my scrunchies. So this is what I mean by you can change your hook size. This one here is a Loops and Threads soft classic acrylic yarn. This is my go-to yarn for majority of my projects, especially when I'm making any kind of amigurumi, when I'm making my flowers, my ornaments, my beanies, anything like that. This is the yarn that I'm using. It is inexpensive, which is great. It comes in a variety of colors and you get a lot of it in one skein, which is very, very handy, especially if you are a beginner and you want to not have to worry about frogging all of your projects. We covered frogging in episode number 1. It just basically means unraveling your work. So yes, this is a absolute great starter friendly yarn. I get this at Michael's. If you are in the States, there is Hobby Lobby, there's Joann. They will all have some kind of basic acrylic yarn that you can pick up there as well. The one warning I will give you though, when it does come to picking out yarn for a project, if your project said that it is looking for a medium weight size 4 yarn, I would suggest sticking with the same brand and subcategory. So what I mean by that is Loops and Threads Soft Classic. Love this yarn. This is a little bit thicker of an acrylic yarn than the Loops and Threads Impeccable. So why this is important is if you are doing any kind of color work within your project or like color changes, even though they are both a 4-weight yarn, because this one is just slightly thinner, it's going to change the dimensions of your project. So do your best to stick to the exact same brand and the exact same subcategories. I more or less just use this one. I don't really know what to do with this one lonely skein of yarn because I didn't realize that when I first started. So I need to figure out a project to do with this one and potentially get more of these ones to continue that project. But that's the only one I have. So I need to figure out what to do with it. But yeah, make sure you are paying attention to the size of the yarn, because just because they say they're a 4-weight, this is a 4-weight, this is a 4-weight, even this is a 4-weight. They will all work up differently when crocheted together. All right, so that's going to lead us to tip number 2, which is gauge and tension. I'm not going to lie, when I first started crocheting, I threw all the gauges out the window. I was like, it's fine. I don't need to worry about gauge, whatever. If you're making clothes, or if you're making a hat, or if you are following a pattern and it is giving you a gauge size, make sure you test out that gauge, because if you don't, your ending result could be a lot smaller or a lot bigger than what you intended, and now you have wasted all of this time creating something that doesn't actually fit. So gauge is really important. The best way to test out any kind of gauge is to create a swatch. A lot of the times in a pattern, they will tell you the size dimensions that is required. So they will either tell you like 4 stitches across, 10 stitches high, should measure 2 inches by 4 inches. If you are not achieving that gauge, this is where you can change your hook size. So depending on the yarn that you use, let's say a project wants you to use a 4-weight yarn and a 5mm hook, and they want you to do like a little square and it should measure 10 by 10. If it ends up like a 9.5 by a 9.5, you can still use that same yarn, but just up your hook size to maybe a 5.5mm instead of a 5mm hook. Redo your gauge and see if that changes it. If not, I would suggest going with the yarn and hook size that they recommend, so that you are getting the exact size that you need for that project. Also, if you are having any trouble with tension, changing up the grip on your yarn or even your hook can help you with that. I have seen a whole bunch of different crocheters online, and I'm telling you, not a single one of us crochets the same. I crochet different than a lot of online influencers. A lot of people use the finger up method. I don't. I've seen people who started with knitting and then moved to crochet, so they tend to crochet and put their yarn on with one hand. So definitely take a look at other crochet influencers and YouTubers online and see how they crochet. Try to mimic what they're doing and find what's comfortable for you. I'm going to create 3 different gauge swatches for you so you can see hook size versus yarn size and see how that hook size actually changes the size of the gauge. Alright guys, so here you can see a little demonstration on how gauge is so important. All of these are 9 stitches across and 8 rows up. They all start with a foundation chain and they are all using the same tension. This one here is done with a 4.5mm hook. This is the 5mm hook, right here, and then a 5.5mm hook. So the size of the hook will drastically change your finished project. Tip number 3 is reading patterns and charts. When I first started crochet, I used to see a lot of crochet charts and they were super intimidating looking because it's just a whole bunch of symbols in the shape of your final project. And that confused the ever-living life out of me. So I decided I'm just going to use regular patterns that I just read through. And they ended up being a lot easier for me. Now that I understand what each symbol means, I can use the graphs and the actual like charts now, but I still prefer just writing out patterns. The biggest tip when it comes to reading a written pattern when you are crocheting, especially if it's your first one, is read it out loud. I used to try to just do it all in my head as I was crocheting, and a lot of the times it didn't make sense to me until it was either read to me or I read it out loud. Another thing that you want to do is learn what all the abbreviations mean. There are several abbreviations when it comes to a crochet pattern, and I know it ends up looking like an entirely different language, but I promise you, you will get a hang of all of those abbreviations. I did touch base on some of those in episode number 1, so for today, I'm going to actually go through them, and I'm going to show you how each abbreviation looks once it's crocheted. Alright, so these are some abbreviations that you will come across with every new pattern that you have, especially if you are doing an amigurumi pattern. So the first I'm going to show you is a magic ring. I am not going to go through each stitch in detail. I'm just going to show you what the finished product looks like. I will be doing the stitch, so you can slow the video down if you want to see how it's done, but I will be posting a whole series of stitches so that you can see how each stitch is done as a tutorial. So first is a magic ring. You will often start with a magic ring on a lot of projects. Oops. I love how when I go to do a video, I forget how to do this kind of stuff. Okay, so magic ring. Okay, that is the start of your magic ring. Another thing you will see is a slip knot. Again, I will be doing a more in-depth tutorial. That is a slip knot. You know it's a slip knot if it can be easily undone by pulling the thread or the yarn. So we'll do another slip knot. This is also how a lot of garment patterns start, is with a slip knot, and then you do a chain. So this is for a chain, which is usually CH. It's just pulling your yarn through. There's one chain, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That is a chain, a foundation chain, a start to most garments. This is usually what you're going to be starting with. This is also very handy when it comes to making flowers or making petals or leaves. A lot of the times you do have to chain after doing certain stitches. So now I'm going to show you a single crochet. We're going to be working back through our chain here. So this is our first stitch. All the stitches are little V's, as you can see. We're going to go through this top section of the stitch here. We're going to just grab our yarn, 2 loops on the hook, and pull through. And that will be our single crochet. So I'll show you one more time. There is a single crochet. The next abbreviation you will sometimes see is a half double crochet. So in that case, we are going to yarn over first before going into our stitch. Yarn over, pull through. You will have 3 loops on your hook, and we pull through all 3. That is a half double crochet. The next stitch is going to be a double crochet. Yarn over, go through your stitch, yarn over and pull through. We go through the first 2 and through the last 2. Again, yarn over in your stitch, yarn over and pull through. Go through your first 2 loops and then your last 2 loops. So you can see how each stitch is slowly growing. We had our single crochets, half double crochets, double crochets. Now I'm going to do a treble crochet. For a treble crochet, you're going to yarn over twice before going into your stitch. Yarn over once and pull through. We pull through the first 2, we pull through the second 2, and we pull through the last 2. Again, yarn over twice, into your stitch. We're going to yarn over and pull through 2, pull through 2, and pull through 2. So we have our single, half, double, and treble crochets. These are pretty standard stitches that you will need to know for any patterns that come your way. So I will, like I said, I will be going more in depth in some videos to show you how to do them a little bit slower, but this is how they end up looking. Often when you get to the end of the row, they do ask you to chain 1. So again, that's just yarn over, pull through, and then we're going to turn our work. Always turn your work in the same direction every time you crochet. So if you're always turning the way I just did, always turn it that way. If you're always turning it this way, always turn it that way. Keep consistency to your projects. That way they look neat and it looks purposeful. So again, I like going this way. So we're going to chain 1. We're going to turn our work. Now we are working on the wrong side of our project. So this is the right side of our project. You can easily see all the stitches are like little V's, and each one of these little holes is a stitch that we would go into. When we turn our project, there's little holes in the back here. These are behind our stitches, and these are the stitches we're going to be going into when we are working the other way around. So I'm just going to do a series of single crochets in these back stitches just so you can see where they are. So our first one's here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So now we have 8 single crochet along the top. We're going to chain 1, we're going to turn. The next thing I want to show you is front loop versus back loop. So as I said, each stitch you will see is a V shape. So this right here is our V stitch. This first loop here is our front loop. This loop back here is our back loop. So if you have a project that says to go in the back loops only, you're going to look at the V and you're going to do the yarn that's farthest from you. So we're going to go in the middle of that V up top, and there is 1. Next one in the middle, 2. So instead of coming this way, the way we did our first row of single crochet, we're coming through the top and getting only that back loop. 3, 4. So these are back loop crochet. Now we're going to do our front loop crochet. So again, we're going to look at that V and we're going to do this piece of yarn that's in the front of the V. And we're only going to grab that one. There's 1. There's 2. There's 3. Okay, so we have some back loop and some front loop crochet. Let's chain 1. Another thing you will see is increases and decreases. So to do an increase, it's basically the same type of stitch in a stitch. So we're going to do an increase in this first stitch here with a single crochet. There's 1 single crochet. Oops. That happens, don't worry about it. And we're going to do another single crochet in the same stitch. And that is an increase. Let's do it again. So single crochet, 1, 2. There's another increase. One more time. 1, 2. So that is 2 stitches per stitch is an increase. To do a decrease, there are several ways of doing it. I like to do an invisible decrease so that you can't see the decrease from the front of your project. With that, we're going to be taking the front loops of our stitches and we're going to grab the front loop of the one, we're going to go under, grab the front loop of the other, yarn over and pull through those 2 front loops. So we have 2 loops on our hook, yarn over and pull through those 2. So that is an invisible decrease. So you cannot tell that the decrease was done. So we're going to do that one more time on the end here. Going to grab the front loop, yarn over, pull through the 2 front loops. Whoops. So sorry. And then we're going to pull through those 2. And that's another decrease. So we've done our single crochet, half double crochet, double crochet, treble crochet. We have chained, we have done a magic ring, we have worked in the back loops, in the front loops, done an increase and a decrease. One more thing that you may see when coming on a pattern, especially if it is the ending of a pattern and they want you to finish it off, they may ask you to slip stitch. And in that case, in a slip stitch, all you do is you yarn over, pull your yarn through, and pull it right through your hook. It's only a single yarn over. So again, yarn over, right through the loop. And this is a slip stitch. Okay. I know this seemed like a lot, but this was basically just visuals for what each abbreviation looks like when it's actually crocheted. I will be doing in-depth videos, as I said, so that we can actually go a little bit slower and I can teach you each individual stitch and the front post, back post, front loop, back loop, anything that you will need to know for your crochet patterns. Tip number 4 is going to be common crochet mistakes and fixes. So when I first started crocheting, I would get to the end of the project and it looked nothing like what the picture looked like. I then later found out that I was accidentally increasing and decreasing when I shouldn't have been, and that is ultimately going to change what the end project looks like. So the easiest way to fix this is by using a stitch marker. Stitch markers are your best friend, I promise you. I never used to use them when I first started crocheting, and I wish I did. It would have saved me so many hours of recrocheting projects and frogging projects, so I make sure I have a whole stash of stitch markers. I recently started creating my own stitch markers because I found making them myself, I was actually able to not lose them. However, you can just go online. You can purchase a little baggie of stitch markers. Here are the ones that I have. They give you so many, so if you lose them, it's not that big of a deal. But I also like to make my own. So these ones are just hand beaded, cute little stitch markers. And I don't lose these ones as much, so I like making those ones. The stitch markers are also for sale on my Etsy shop. Stitch markers should always be placed at the beginning of a row, and then you can count how many stitches you are crocheting around as you go, and as long as you end up with the right number, feel free to move up into the next row. This is very useful, especially when you are doing amigurumi and you are doing a spiral crochet in which the stitches never stop. There is no actual end point. This is going to help you keep track of your stitches, and that way you won't have any accidental increases or decreases, and your project is going to end up the way it's supposed to. Tip number 5 is going to be stretch and self-care. Don't be crocheting for 12 hours at a time. That is not good for you. Make sure you get up, you walk around, stretch your neck, stretch your back, stretch your wrists, stretch your hands, stretch your fingers. Take breaks at least every hour. If you are brand new to crochet, take breaks every half an hour. Your hands are gonna hurt. I'm sorry, they just will. You are doing new motions that your hands and your muscles are not used to doing, and until you build up a tolerance to it, your hands are gonna hurt. So there's simple finger exercises you can do just by pulling them back, wrist exercises you can do, rotate your wrists. Don't crack your knuckles. That's such a bad habit. I do it, but don't do it. Don't be me. Be better than me. Just make sure you get up and you move them around, loosen them up. When I first started, because of the way I hold my crochet hook, I have a big callus right here because when I crochet, my crochet hook is actually resting. So I have tried to change the way I hold my crochet hook. You can hold it like this. You can hold it like this. You can hold it like this. There's so many ways to hold a crochet hook. Just find the one that is most comfortable for you and stick with that one. Crochet hooks have definitely come a long way since I first started crocheting. When I first started crocheting, all that was available to me were these metal ones. These are horrible. Like, they're a great hook, but they are absolutely horrible for your hands. They hurt. There's no comfort. It is just metal, and they're just uncomfortable. So I don't like using these ones. These are fairly inexpensive. They are probably the most inexpensive ones, but if you are going to be crocheting for a while, I don't necessarily suggest using just a pure metal hook. It's gonna hurt your hand over time. You're gonna want something that's just a little bit more ergonomic. Once I was done with the metal hooks, I switched to a hook like this. This one has a little bit more padding. It was definitely more comfortable and easier for me to crochet with. The only thing I don't like about this one, you can see it bends. I don't like any type of crochet hook that bends. So plastic crochet hooks, absolutely not, do not like them. The crochet hooks that light up, unless I'm using one that's like a 5mm or higher, I don't use them because they are so thin, they are most likely gonna break, and I don't like using them. So I swapped out this lovely little guy for a crochet hook like this. This is metal all the way through, but it has an ergonomic design so that it is comfortable for my hand. It does not bend as I'm crocheting, and I know that tip is not going to break off. So as of right now, these are my favorite brand to use, and honestly, I got them on Temu. Like, they are fantastic. They were really cheap too. I ordered 2 sets. They have all of the crochet sizes that I need. They start with a 2mm hook, and they go all the way up to a 6mm hook. But they all have different colors, so you know exactly what size it is you are grabbing. I absolutely love these ones, so I'm going to link those ones down below. Hopefully they still have them because these are great. I do think you can get them on Amazon as well. Because of the way I hold my crochet hooks, I do not get any of the ones that have a round base. Those are more for if you hold it like a knife. I don't hold my crochet hook that way. So if you are a crocheter that way, the Furls crochet hooks are really nice. They have a wider base. I have also seen people put like pencil pencil grips on their crochet hooks. Whatever it is you can do to make it that much more comfortable, by all means do it, especially if you're crocheting for longer periods of time. You want to make sure that your hands are going to be comfortable. So find a hook that works with you. Naturally, over time and crocheting for many, many hours, your hands are going to hurt no matter what. So one thing that I purchased for myself, which has been a game changer for my crochet, are compression gloves. I'm going to link these down below. I got these ones off of Amazon. It was a 2-pack, and I don't wear them while I crochet because they're tight. They're a little restricting in movement, but I do put them on when I go to sleep, and I wear them when I'm not crocheting just to help my hands, and it has made a huge difference. Don't ask me how they work. I don't get the process, but they are really, really good, and they have definitely saved my hands time and time again. So if you are prone to arthritis, or if you just have sore hands, check out the link for these compression gloves. Also, I would like to state that I am not affiliated with anything that I am recommending in this video. These are literally just items that I really like using, and I'm going to share that with you guys. Tip number 6 is building a mindful yarn stash. Looking at all of you YouTube starters. Just because you started a crochet channel does not mean you have to have a whole wall of every color of yarn behind you. Clearly. I do not have the storage to keep that kind of thing around, so I make sure that I am mindful when I am purchasing my yarn and making sure that I am buying yarn for the project it is intended for. There are some yarns that I have bought multiples of because I do use them in my Etsy shop, so I do go through them quite often, but I don't have a whole wall of yarn. I would love to have a whole wall of yarn, but I don't have the need for it. It is not necessary. And honestly, you're just going to end up spending a lot of money, and you might not ever end up using that yarn. So be mindful when you are shopping for yarn. Make sure you are getting the colors and the yarn types that you need for your project, and try to stick with just that. Just because the yarn is on sale and the yarn is pretty does not necessarily mean you need to buy it. Although I am guilty of doing that as well. Alright guys, that is it for episode number 2 of What I Wish I Knew Before I Started Crocheting. Hopefully these tips are going to save you some time, some money, and some hand pain. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to give it a like. If you are not subscribed, smash that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!